We are in Radio Studio A, where the Bridge does some of its local 909 sessions. And, you know, I'm going to go all historical on you now because I swear burlesque really is a big part of Kansas City's entertainment past.
It's true, and today a modern practitioner of the art of the tease is teaching the craft to a new crop of aspiring performers.
She calls it Burlesque 101, and KCPT's Lindsay Fote will now reveal some of what's on Sophie Sassafras's syllabus.
I've always had a love for all things vintage. I would always dress up in my great-grandma's closet in her old lady clothes, even as a child. So when I moved here to Kansas City about 7 years ago, I answered a Craigslist ad. The troupe that I went to go audition for fell in love with me, and from there it's history. I've been teaching burlesque and pinup probably for about 2 years now. This is a 6-week course. And we start off with the first week just being about intros, and I introduce myself and kind of give the girls a background of how I got started, why I do it. I try to do like a little bonding and get everyone just opened up.
Stretched out, we're gonna do some shimmies.
I also point out that I'm not the skinniest or the tallest or the best looking by far, but so we just learn from right there that we're all human.
Well, that's okay too.
And then from there we go into things like Striptease 101.
Create a line behind me and just do some sexy walking. Cha-cha. Oh, let's see that one more time. I didn't get enough of that. Okay, yeah. There you, that's
common misconceptions about burlesque are just that it's raunchy and it's
I always like to start off with a little
stripperish, but if you go and give a burlesque show a chance, you'll see that it's more theatrical. So usually every burlesque routine has a story behind it or a theme.
2, 3, 4, 5,
a lot of time is dedicated to making costumes.
That's cute.
One class we do basic makeup, cat eyes.
I'm an owl, not a cat.
Foundations of pinup makeup are really honestly very basic, but it's just how you apply it and how you wear it. Lip gloss and get craft glitter because it's finer, or like get the fine craft glitter. And then we'll do another class with vintage hair. So I teach them how to do victory rolls and curlers and set their hair. Fun. It's by far probably the top 2 favorite classes, other than making pasties. I was quite impressed how by the end of the 6 weeks we were able to throw together a routine within 2 classes. So they had it in them and they didn't even know it.
Burlesque is just fun. It's not super serious. At least I don't feel like it is. And it kind of gives you a little extra pizzazz in your whatever.
For me, it was more of a confidence experience. Seeing some of my other friends come out of their shell a little bit when we do certain things, you know, was fun.
And you do have to get past that kind of giggle stage because, I mean, it's hard sometimes to look in the mirror and go, oh, who's that person? But I think by the end you get a different impression. So I think that's what's important.
I like to say it's about women empowerment because that's really what I want the girls to take away after being in this class.